you mad at me for? I didn't make the movie. You know, it is kind of incredible that The Simpsons has been around for basically 3 decades as one of the most consistently popular and influential TV shows of all time, a generationally beloved institution that also figures into the origin story of an entire generation of comedians, comedy writers, and animators, and may have had a bigger pop cultural influence than any other collective of fictional characters outside of the Walt Disney canon, and yet the problem with APU is probably the first piece of serious long-form negative criticism I think I've ever seen of it that wasn't in the form of a whiny fanboy blogging about how the show isn't as funny as it was whenever he personally ceased to be a regular viewer of Sunday night television. I mean, the only entity on television that seems to be more culturally bulletproof than The Simpsons at this point is the ghost of Mr. Rogers, and if there is anything negative to be said about Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, I don't want to hear it. In any case, that very observation speaks very highly of The Simpsons itself, and perhaps not surprisingly, so does the problem with APU. Comedian Hari Kondabolu, who directed and stars in the documentary feature, describes himself up front as a huge fan of the series, which he credits with introducing him to huge stretches of popular culture and helping him to shape his creative and comedic voice. He just also has a big issue with the series in the form of Apu Nahasapima Petalan, the Indian Quickie Mart clerk famously voiced by Hank Azaria, whom he views alternately as a source of frustration for him while growing up in an era when this caricature was essentially the only point of reference for Indian culture among his non-Indian peers, but also, as intentionally or not, an unnecessarily unflattering stereotype of first-generation immigrants like his own parents. The resulting documentary about his attempts to come to terms with the presence of Apu in his life effectively takes a page from Michael Moore's famous debut film Roger and Me by framing itself around Kondabolu's attempts to sit down and secure a discussion with Hank Azaria himself for the film about how he feels about the character's legacy and whether or not it might be time to either retire or modify the performance within the series. And while I won't spoil how that particular quest pans out, the detours along the way end up overtaking the singular narrative to become something more ambitious, as he talks to a who's who of South Asian film and television personalities to get their takes on the legacy of a popular character that it turns out they've all had to deal with being compared to and joked about in relation to, which is kind of amazing when you think about it. And the variety of reactions are genuinely enlightening, with many sharing the director's complex view of the character, while others see him as a more relatively small example of a much larger problem with Hollywood having too limited or disrespectful a view of what South Asian culture and individuals have to offer, with the most negative take actually coming not from Kondabolu himself, but from Kal Penn, who reveals that he finds Apu so distasteful he's actually unable to enjoy The Simpsons as a whole. What's really refreshing is that while Kondabolu isn't exactly reinventing the wheel here, provocative subject matter aside, this is a fairly standard let's talk about an issue hour-long interview doc. He's clearly got a strong sense of how new media works and where the conversation about this film will likely be debated. He gets right out in front of the defensive social media sea lion set at the very beginning, explaining with exasperation that no, he doesn't think you're a racist if you like Apu, no, he doesn't hate The Simpsons, yes, he understands The Simpsons, makes fun of everyone, yes, he knows that Apu is one of the smartest characters on the show, yes, he's aware the writers have made big efforts over the years to make him more of an actual character and to positively portray how they feel about Indian American and South Asian culture. And if I have one significant criticism of the piece, I honestly wish he'd spent more time on that one, as opposed to the kind of disappointingly stagey drama-building moments about his quest to talk to Azaria one-on-one. What makes the case of Apu and The Simpsons so fascinating is that most TV shows, and thus most TV characters, don't last for 30 years and counting, so the industry doesn't really have a template for dealing with characters built around jokes that might have been seen as okay in one decade, still being around at the point where they come to be seen as kind of offensive. So the question of whether or not you can redeem a character like Apu, assuming that you need to, is an interesting thing to explore. The fact that many people are going to reflexively recoil from even hearing this argument is baked directly into the film, with the director and star acknowledging that he knows he'll be called a social justice warrior or a snowflake, and arguing that he has in fact let this go for the entire 28 years the series has been on TV. And while he makes his arguments quite forcefully, the broader film is more about asking his audience to just actually listen to him and the people affected. However you may feel about Apu, it's hard to hear so many people of South Asian descent describe being made fun of by being called Apu, or hearing "thank you, come again" used as a slur, or being asked to do it more like Apu in acting auditions, and not appreciate where they're coming from. I mean, put all together, that really sounds like it must have sucked. You might not agree with the premise or the conclusions here, but you will come away with a better understanding of what the issue is, what Kondabolu is talking about, and as a bonus, it comes in the form of a brisk, fast-paced, well-assembled documentary. 3 stars, I recommend it.